If you could only eat one last meal before you died, what would it be? Death row inmates Arthur Lucas and Ronald Turpin chose steak, potatoes, vegetables, and pie. This is Last Meal. So we'll start with the thing that takes the longest, obviously. So that's the potato. Start the oven at 400 degrees, and then take your potato and wash it. Obviously, in hindsight, I probably don't need to show this. If something grows in dirt, you're going to want to wash it before putting it in your mouth. Also, if you don't like potatoes exploding in the oven, probably a good idea to poke some holes in it. That'll allow the steam to escape, you know. For the steak, we're going to go with a big old T-bone, because, you know, this seems like the kind of steak somebody in the 60s would order. Plus, because it's got a filet on one side and a strip steak on the other, you get two steaks for the price of, well, two, because, you know, they kind of expensive. So if you like flavor, you're going to want to salt and pepper it generously on both sides. You want to do this like 45 minutes in advance. That way the salt will have time to penetrate the meat and release some of the moisture. That way by the time you're ready to cook it, you can dry it off and get a nice sear on it. Also, in hindsight, use your left hand. That way you're not blocking the camera stupid. So since we're going to die right after eating this, we got to make sure to stay healthy and eat our vegetables. So we're going to do a zucchini and a bell pepper. Again, I probably don't need to remind you that washing vegetables is a thing that you should do. So for the zucchini, we're going to top and tail it, as the kids say, and then cut it lengthwise and then chop it into smaller pieces. For the bell pepper, there's a ton of different ways to cut bell peppers, you know, but this is the way that I kind of like to do it, where you stick a knife in, you run it down the side all the way around, and then you cut all the way around the stem, and then you can just pop the stem and all the seeds out. Ideally, they'll all come out with it, but in this case, they kind of stuck to the inside a little bit, but that's okay. You can just hammer it with your knife to get some of them out of there. Back to the potato. I mean, a baked potato is, like, fine if you're boring, but, like, obviously it would taste a lot better if you stuff a bunch of dairy products in there. So I'm going to give it the quadra-cow treatment, which in this case is going to be milk, sour cream, butter, and a whole bunch of shredded cheese. Cut the potato in half and then scoop out the insides, and then add those insides to all those delicious dairy products. Then fill the potato carcasses with the now much more delicious filling, and add a little extra cheese on top, because, you know, live a little. Then you're going to want to put it back in the oven for another 25 minutes or so, till the cheese gets nice and bubbly. Now that it's been at least 45 minutes that steak's been resting, throw a big, heavy bottom pot or pan or some sort of cooking device. In this case, cast iron's really good for this. Put it on the stove, high heat, and add a few TBSPs of oil. Not olive oil, by the way, that burns at a relatively low temperature. You want to use like canola or vegetable oil. I mean, I guess an olive is a vegetable, but a non-olive vegetable oil. Now, pat your steak dry with some paper towels. Don't worry about sucking all that flavor off, because you let it rest this long, the flavor's all inside it now, so, you know, the surface doesn't really matter as much. Now that the pan's super hot and smoking, you're going to want to add that steak. Make sure to drop it away from you. That way, if it splashes, it goes in the direction that your body isn't. Some people will say that, you know, you shouldn't, like, flip the steak multiple times during the cooking process. Those people are wrong. There's no reason to not do that. In fact, it'll cook more evenly if you do flip it a bunch of times, because the top, which is now hot, will continue to radiate down and cook it on the inside, you know? Whereas if you don't flip it, it's only getting heated from the bottom, so the bottom's going to cook way more than the top will. Also, for added fun, you can switch the flipping utensils halfway through cooking. You get to do more dishes that way, too. Plus, if the sear isn't up to your liking after the first flip, that's totally fine. You can just flip it back and add more to the sear. You know, you don't have to do it all in one go. See, look at that sear. That's the kind of sear that some people would say you can only get if you never flip your steak. It's super important to keep checking the temperature with the thermometer, because that's how you can tell if something is done or not. If you're going for like a medium rare, which is probably the best, you're going to want to take it off the heat at around 120 degrees. That is a little lower than medium rare, but keep in mind that the super hot outside of the steak is going to keep cooking the inside a little bit more as it rests. So, a few degrees under what you want it to be is a good time to take it off. Now that the steak's out of there, you can add all the vegetables to the same pan. Sprinkle some salt on there, any sort of seasonings you like. In hindsight, it's probably a bit too much oil for the amount of vegetables here, but, again, calories don't really matter at this point. So after about 25 minutes in the oven, with a few minutes under the broiler at the end, the potatoes nice and good and cooked, and the cheese is all bubbly and brown and delicious. And there we have it. A nice, blurry shot of steak, potatoes, and vegetables. Make sure to check your camera if you actually want your video to look good. And for the pie, I went to the store and I bought pie. It's the first episode. I'm not making pie from scratch. All in all, it's a pretty good meal, who doesn't like steak and cheesy potatoes and vegetables and pie? It's nothing too extravagant, but it's pretty good. They could have done a lot worse, that's for sure. I'd give it about a 6 out of 10.